on base levels of pay. So that's where we begin in our discussion with the Shadow Finance Minister, James Paterson, this morning. He joins us live from Canberra. Good to see you, James. We've got a bit to get to today, so let's just start there. A quick one on that. The government took it to the election. Will you support the government's push to protect penalty rates?
Well, we'll have a look at the legislation once it's actually been introduced today. I understand that my colleague Tim Wilson only had a briefing as most recently as yesterday, so we'll consider legislation carefully. Everyone wants higher wages for Australians, but the government itself has previously said that the independence of the Fair Work Commission is important, and it appears that this bill seeks to undermine that, so we'll look at it closely.
OK, well, let's move on to our top story this morning, James. The government looking at winding back our tough biosecurity laws for US beef, which had already been relaxed to a point, but it's beef from second nations such as Mexico that's the problem. Do you support this to be used as a bargaining chip, this watering down of our biosecurity laws?
Well, Pete, the Prime Minister himself has said that we couldn't relax the restrictions on the importation of US beef because of serious biosecurity concerns. So if the government has found some way of dealing with that issue, protecting our domestic agricultural industry from the introduction of foreign diseases and pests, then they should say so. They should stand up and explain that, not anonymously leak it to a newspaper. Full credit to the AFR for getting the story, but a major story like this, affecting a major export industry of about $11 billion a year and about an $82 billion domestic industry when you include red meat more broadly, deserves more answers than this, deserves more details than this, and many of them will be alarmed by the news this morning and they deserve some reassurance.
No, the National Farmers Federation would be filthy about it, I'm sure. I've spoken to them a few times in the past over any attempt to water down biosecurity laws. But when it comes to US beef, apparently that's OK. According to the science, as I mentioned, it's the secondary nations such as Mexico which would be the problem and could possibly be where, mad cow disease originates. If that's the case, is there any way to stop, second nations from passing their beef on to the Americans and then the Americans passing it on to us?
Well, it's more easy than it ever has been to track the origin of species and cattle and other produce because we've got technology that allows us to do that more easily. Australia does that with our production of meat in Australia, and so there's no reason why that couldn't be done by other countries as well. Perhaps the Prime Minister has found a way through this problem. Perhaps he's found a way of ensuring that beef is only imported that is raised and reared in the United States, that it's not introduced from other third countries that are not subject to the US-Australia Free Trade Agreement. But if he has, he should explain how he's done so. He should stand up today and explain to the beef farmers of Australia that there is no risk for their biosecurity and that he hasn't watered it down. But if he has watered it down, I think this is going to be a very difficult one for the government to explain. OK, well, I mean, just a final one on this one, though. Is it a good opportunity, though, to be used as a bargaining chip in the tariff negotiations that are taking place at the moment? It doesn't look like. I mean, we just heard from Donald Trump a moment ago where he's talked about trade deals that will be done with Indonesia, Japan, the latest one, the UK as well. He singled out all these countries, but we are in the rest of the world group, it appears, and not getting much more of an extra break at this stage. So getting back to, beef, which is a problem for the Americans, Trump has said so in the past. Is this perhaps a good way to start? Well, the best way to start would be with a meeting with President Trump, and now 261 days since he was elected President of the United States, the Prime Minister has still not achieved a meeting with him. It is inexplicable that Australia, traditionally a Tier 1 US ally, has gone this long without a meeting between our Prime Minister and a new President. It's extraordinary. Frankly, countries who are far less close to the United States have managed to get audiences with the President in the Oval Office far earlier than this government even appears to have attempted to do so. So that is the critical thing that needs to be done if we're to secure a good trade relationship and, frankly, also safeguard AUKUS and our important national security relationship as well.
Well, on AUKUS, we've now paid a second $800 million to the United States. How do you feel about that? It would surely be hard for the Americans to knock the deal back now.
I have absolutely no problem with continuing to make the investment in the US submarine industrial base to increase the production of Virginia-class submarines to meet our shared deterrence goals in the Indo-Pacific, as long as that is not the government's only strategy and only plan to secure AUKUS. And looking from the outside, it appears that that is the only strategy because, as I said before, the Prime Minister's made no attempt to go and see the President in Washington, D.C. and meet with him and make that case. It is not good enough to hope that Bridge Colby and the Pentagon will just arrive at the right conclusion. We have to be actively engaged in this process. We have to roll up our sleeves with deft diplomacy and use every advantage we have in this relationship to demonstrate why AUKUS should continue, because it's critical to Australia's national security.
All right. Just a final one in your house, James. Susan Lee, she's already under immense pressure over net zero. Is the coalition making moves now to ditch it entirely?
Pete, I do understand the legitimate interest that the media and other has in the coalition's position on net zero, but frankly, for the next 3 years, our position on this issue is academic. We're in opposition. It's the government's position on this issue that is material, that actually affects Australians' lives. And on their watch, emissions are up, prices are up, and the system has become less reliable. That is a trifecta of failure on the Albanese government's watch under their policies, and that is what deserves the most scrutiny and attention. We will go through our processes, we'll come to a conclusion, we will share it with the Australian people in due course, but in the meantime, let's interrogate the failures of this government's policies.
OK, but isn't net zero at the heart of the marriage of the coalition, so it matters in that sense?
It's certainly an important public policy issue, and we will go through a structured, thoughtful, considered process to land on a policy that balances the important imperatives that we have, which is we do understand we've got obligations for emissions reduction, but we also understand that our first and most important obligation is delivering an energy system to the Australian people which is affordable and reliable and doesn't ship jobs overseas. And so we will go through that process, we'll arrive at a conclusion well before the next election and share it with the Australian people and the media.
What's your preference, James?
I'm not going to publicly canvass my view. I've got an opportunity to have my say through internal processes.
Knew you'd say that. Anyway, good to have you with us, James. Talk to you again.